The large conference room on Galactic Station 7 was filled with the usual sounds of different alien species talking. Jake Morrison sat at the human table, his hands folded on the smooth metal surface. He watched as the Zephyrian representative waved his forearms in the air, speaking in his high-pitched voice about trade routes and profit margins. "The humans will take the Kepler mining contracts," announced Counselor Vrex, the massive Vorthan who ran the meeting. His gray skin looked like rough stone, and his red eyes glowed as he stared at Jake. "The radiation levels are too high for most species, but humans seem to handle it well enough." Jake nodded slowly. "We accept the contract. When do we start?" Laughter filled the room. The Zephyrians made their clicking sounds that meant they found something funny. The Vorthans rumbled deep in their chests. Even the floating ethereals, who rarely showed emotion, pulsed with colors that meant amusement. "Look at them," whispered a Zephyrian to his companion. "So eager to work in the death zones? No wonder they never complain." Jake heard the comment, but kept his face calm. He had been Earth's main diplomat for 12 years now. He had sat through hundreds of these meetings, listening to aliens divide up the galaxy like it was their personal property. Humans always got the worst jobs, the most dangerous assignments, the smallest profits. And Jake always said yes. Dr. Lisa Bennett sat next to him, taking notes on her tablet. She was one of the few people who understood what Jake was really doing. Her job was to study alien behavior, and she had learned many interesting things over the years. Things that would surprise the other species if they knew humans were paying attention. "The Kepler system has 17 planets," Counselor Vrex continued. "Humans will mine the 3 most radioactive ones. The Zephyrians will handle the profitable gas giant operations. The Vorthans will oversee security." "What about worker safety?" asked Captain Ryan Cole, who commanded Earth's small fleet of defensive ships. His voice was tight with controlled anger, Brex's red eyes fixed on Ryan. "Humans have proven very good at surviving in harsh conditions. That is why you get these jobs. The Council has confidence in your abilities." More laughter from around the room. Jake placed a gentle hand on Ryan's arm, stopping him from saying more. Ryan was a good man, but he let his emotions show too easily. That was dangerous in a room full of predators. "We appreciate the Council's confidence," Jake said. "Our people will begin mining operations within the month." The meeting continued for 3 more hours. Jake listened as the aliens discussed which species would control which star systems. Humans were mentioned only when someone needed workers for a job that might kill them. Each time, Jake agreed with the same calm voice. When the meeting ended, Jake walked through the station's corridors with Lisa and Ryan. The station was huge, built by the ethereals centuries ago. Its walls were covered with artwork from dozens of different species. None of it was human. "I don't understand how you do it," Ryan said as they reached their quarters. "Sitting there, listening to them talk about us like we're tools." "Tools can be very useful," Lisa said quietly. "People tend to forget that tools are watching and learning." Jake smiled at her comment. Lisa was brilliant, and she saw things others missed. She had been studying the aliens for years, writing reports that seemed boring to most people. But Jake read every word she wrote. Her reports were full of valuable information about alien weaknesses, fears, and blind spots. In his private room, Jake activated the secure communication system. The screen showed Director Paul Martinez, head of Human Intelligence Operations. Paul worked from a hidden facility on Luna, Earth's moon. Very few people knew what he really did. "How did the meeting go?" Paul asked. "The same as always," Jake replied. "They gave us the Kepler contracts. 17 planets, 3 for us to mine. All highly radioactive." Paul nodded. "Perfect. Our people have been wanting to study those radiation sources. The energy readings are unusual. What about the Vorthan security presence? We'll handle it. Our agents have been watching their patrol patterns for months. They're very predictable. Jake ended the call and sat back in his chair. Through his window, he could see the stars. Somewhere out there, human colonies were growing. Human engineers were building. Human scientists were discovering. And all of it was happening while the galaxy thought humans were just grateful servants. Next morning, Jake met with the other human representatives. There were 12 of them, each responsible for different aspects of human-alien relations. To the aliens, they looked like a small, weak delegation. They had no idea what they were really seeing. The Vorthans are planning something, reported Agent Linda Gray, who worked as a cultural attaché. She had been living among the Vorthans for 8 years, and they trusted her completely. I've seen military communications about human colony inspections. They're testing our reactions. Let them test, said General Karen White, though her official title was Assistant Administrator for Colonial Affairs. We've been preparing for this. Jake looked around the table at his team. Each person had been chosen carefully. Each had spent years building relationships with different alien species. Each was far more than they appeared to be. Remember, Jake said, patience is our greatest weapon. They think we're weak because we don't fight back immediately. They don't understand that we're studying them, learning how they think, discovering what makes them strong and what makes them vulnerable. Admiral Steve Parker, officially listed as a shipping coordinator, spoke up. Our fleet positions are ready. If they push too hard, we can respond. Not yet, Jake said firmly. We wait until we're certain of victory. Rushing into a fight is what they expect from younger species. We're going to surprise them. That afternoon, Jake visited the station's observation deck. It was a popular place for diplomats to meet informally. The view of space was incredible, with nebulae painting the darkness in bright colors. Counselor Vrex was there, talking with a group of other Vorthans. They were discussing human colonies, and Jake listened carefully while pretending to enjoy the view. The humans are too comfortable, Vrex was saying. They need to remember their place in the galaxy. Perhaps it's time for more direct supervision. Agreed, said another Vorthan. They're becoming too confident. Some of our agents report that humans are asking questions about our military capabilities. Jake's heart rate increased slightly, but his face remained calm. He had trained for years to control his reactions. The Vorthans were noticing human intelligence gathering. That was concerning, but not unexpected. We should increase inspections of their colonies, Vrex continued. Random searches, movement restrictions, loyalty tests. Show them that we're watching. And if they resist, then we remind them what happens to species that forget their place. Jake turned and walked away, his mind already working on the implications. The Vorthans were moving faster than expected. That meant human plans might need to accelerate as well. He found Lisa in the station's library, reading alien history texts. She looked up as he approached. They're getting suspicious, he said quietly. Good, she replied. That means our people are doing their jobs well. The question is whether they're suspicious enough to act, or just suspicious enough to make mistakes. Jake sat down next to her. What do you think? I think they're about to do something that will show the entire galaxy just how patient humans can really be. As Jake looked out at the stars, he felt a familiar calm settle over him. Somewhere out there, human agents were watching alien fleets. Human engineers were building secret facilities. Human scientists were developing new technologies. And all of it was happening while the galaxy believed humans were just happy to serve. The illusion was still holding. But Jake could feel the pressure building. Soon, very soon, the galaxy would learn what human patience really meant. 3 months had passed since the Kepler mining contracts began. The Vorthan inspections were getting worse every week. Lieutenant Amy Watson stood on the bridge of the cargo ship Horizon, watching as another Vorthan patrol vessel approached. Her hands gripped the control panel as she fought to stay calm. "This is the third inspection this week," said her second officer, Lieutenant Ben Cruz. "They're not even pretending to look for contraband anymore. They just want to intimidate us." Amy nodded, but kept her voice steady. "Let them come aboard. Follow protocol." The Vorthan boarding party consisted of 6 soldiers in black armor. Their leader was a massive warrior named Commander Thok, who seemed to enjoy making humans uncomfortable. He stomped through the ship's corridors, his heavy boots leaving marks. On the metal floor, "Where are you carrying supplies to this time, human?" Thok demanded, his red eyes glowing in the dim light. "New Angelus colony, sir," Amy replied. "Medical supplies and food rations, as listed in our manifest." Thok grabbed the electronic tablet from her hands, scanning the information with exaggerated slowness. "Medical supplies. How convenient. Your species seems to need a lot of medical supplies lately. The radiation from the Kepler mining operations has caused some health issues," Amy explained. "Our people need treatment." "Perhaps your people are too weak for the work," Thok said with a cruel smile. "Perhaps we should find stronger workers." Amy felt anger building in her chest, but she forced her face to remain neutral. "We're completing the mining contracts on schedule, sir. Our productivity reports show we're exceeding expectations." Thok stepped closer, towering over her. "You humans are all the same. So polite, so cooperative. Don't you ever get angry? Don't. You ever want to fight back?" "Fighting leads to suffering," Amy said, repeating the words she had been trained to say. "We prefer peaceful solutions." The Vorthan commander laughed, a deep rumbling sound that echoed through the ship. "Peaceful solutions. How pathetic." He turned to his soldiers. "Search everything. Take your time." The search lasted 4 hours. The Vorthans went through every storage compartment, every crew quarter, every system on the ship. They found nothing unusual, because there was nothing unusual to find. The Horizon was exactly what it appeared to be, a simple cargo vessel, carrying supplies to a human colony. What the Vorthans didn't know was that the real intelligence gathering was happening in their minds. Every question they asked, every route they flew, every security protocol they followed was being carefully observed and recorded by humans who seemed too simple to be dangerous. After the Vorthans left, Amy activated the ship's secure communication system. Captain Ryan Cole appeared on the screen, his face tight with concern. "How bad was it this time?" he asked. "They're getting more aggressive," Amy reported. Commander Thok practically dared me to fight back. "I think they're looking for an excuse to escalate. Any sign they suspect our real operations?" "No, sir. They still think we're just cargo haulers. But their inspection patterns are giving us valuable information about their fleet movements." Ryan nodded. "Good work, Lieutenant. Keep playing the role." Amy ended the call and turned to Ben. "Set course for New Angeles. And send a coded message to Director Martinez. Tell him the Vorthans are probing for weakness more aggressively." Meanwhile, on the human colony of New Hope, Administrator Helen Ross was dealing with her own problems. The Vorthan occupation forces had arrived 2 weeks ago, claiming they needed to provide enhanced security for the colony. In reality, they were treating the human settlers like prisoners. "You will report all colonial activities to us daily," announced Colonel Murdoch, the Vorthan military commander. He stood in Helen's office, his massive frame making the room feel small. Any changes to work schedules, any new construction, any visitors must be approved in advance. Helen kept her voice calm and professional. "Of course, Colonel. We want to cooperate fully with your security requirements." "Good. We will also be conducting random searches of residential areas. Any resistance will be met with appropriate force. I understand. I'll inform the colonists. Colonel Morduk stared at her with his glowing red eyes. You humans are either very wise or very cowardly. I haven't decided which yet. We simply believe in following the law, Helen replied. After the Vorthen left, Helen activated her secure terminal. She had a message from Director Martinez, written in a code that looked like routine agricultural reports. The message was clear. Continue gathering intelligence on Vorthen military procedures and equipment. Helen smiled slightly. The Vorthens had no idea that New Hope Colony was one of the most important intelligence-gathering stations in human space. Every security protocol they demonstrated, every weapon they carried, every tactical formation they used was being carefully documented. In the colony's underground levels. Engineer Tony Clark was working on modifications to the settlement's infrastructure. To any alien observer, he was simply maintaining the power systems and life support equipment. In reality, he was installing highly advanced surveillance equipment and hidden defensive systems. How's the project coming? Asked Dr. Sam Johnson, the colony's chief medical officer. Like Tony, Sam had a second job that the aliens knew nothing about. The new sensors are online, Tony replied quietly. We can now monitor Vorthen communications within a 50-kilometer radius. Their encryption is surprisingly simple. And the defensive systems? Ready when we need them. The Vorthens think they're occupying a helpless farming colony. They have no idea what this place really is. Dr. Johnson nodded. His official job was treating colonists for various medical problems. His real job was analyzing Vorthen biology and psychology. The occupation forces had no idea that their own medical examinations were providing humans with detailed information about Vorthen physiology and potential weaknesses. Back on Earth, Director Martinez was receiving reports from across human space. In his secure command center beneath Luna's surface, he studied data from dozens of colonies, hundreds of ships, and thousands of human agents scattered throughout the galaxy. The pattern is clear, he told his staff. The Vorthens are testing us systematically. They want to see how much pressure we can take before we break. What about the other species? Asked his deputy, Commander Alex Murphy. The Zephyrians are watching and waiting. They want to see if the Vorthens can break human resistance without triggering a galactic incident. The Ethereals are concerned about stability, but they won't act unless there's open warfare. And our preparations? Ahead of schedule. Every Vorthen inspection gives us more intelligence. Every occupation force shows us their tactics and equipment. They think they're intimidating us, but they're actually teaching us everything we need to know. Martinez activated a holographic display showing the galaxy. Red dots marked Vorthen military positions. Blue dots showed human colonies and ships. Green dots represented hidden human assets that the aliens didn't know existed. Look at this, he said, highlighting a section of space near the Vorthen homeworld. They've positioned their main fleet here, believing it gives them strategic advantage. What they don't realize is that we've been placing observation posts throughout this region for 20 years. How long before we're ready for the next phase? Murphy asked. Soon, but not yet. We need them to push harder, to make their intentions absolutely clear. When we act, the entire galaxy needs to understand that we had no choice. On Galactic Station 7, Jake Morrison was preparing for another council meeting. He had received reports from across human space about increasing Vorthen aggression. The pressure was building exactly as he had expected. Dr. Lisa Bennett entered his office carrying her latest research report. The psychological profiles are complete, she said. The Vorthens are exhibiting classic dominant predator behavior. They're escalating their aggression because our passive responses are frustrating them. How much more pressure before they do something irreversible? Jake asked. Not much. Their military psychology is based on intimidation and overwhelming force. If they can't break us through intimidation, they'll resort to violence. Jake studied her report carefully. Lisa's analysis was always accurate. She understood alien psychology better than most aliens understood themselves. What about the other species? The Zephyrians are getting nervous. They're starting to realize that the Vorthans might go too far. The Ethereals are concerned about galactic stability. Neither group wants a war, but neither wants to appear weak. By opposing the Vorthans. Perfect. When the Vorthans finally show their true nature, the other species will be looking for an alternative. Jake walked to his window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, Vorthan ships were harassing human vessels. Vorthan soldiers were intimidating human colonists. Vorthan commanders were planning their next escalation. They had no idea that every action they took was being carefully recorded and analyzed. They thought they were dealing with a weak species that would eventually submit or be destroyed. They were about to learn that patience wasn't the same thing as weakness. The next day, Jake received an urgent message from Administrator Ross on New Hope Colony. The Vorthans had crossed another line. Colonel Morduk had ordered random arrests of colonists, claiming they were suspected of anti-Vorthan activities. 12 humans were now being held without charges. Jake read the report. The attack came without warning. Dr. Susan Parker was working late in the research station's main laboratory when the alarms began screaming. She looked up from her experiments to see red warning lights flashing throughout the facility. All personnel to emergency stations, announced the station's computer system. Hull breach detected in sectors 7 through 12. Atmosphere venting. Susan ran toward the emergency shelter, but she never made it. The second explosion tore through the stations. Central core and everything went dark. The Vorthan attack ships withdrew as quickly as they had arrived. Behind them, Research Station Gamma floated dead in space, its hull torn open, its 47 crew members killed in less than 10 minutes. When the emergency response teams arrived 3 hours later, they found only wreckage. Among the dead were scientists, engineers, and support staff. Some were human families who had been living on the station for years. Children who would never grow up. Parents who would never see their families again. Commander Jake Morrison received the news while he was sleeping in his quarters on Galactic Station 7. The communication from Director Martinez was brief and coded, but the message was clear. The Vorthans had crossed the final line. Jake dressed quickly and made his way to the council chambers. An emergency meeting had been called to discuss the incident at Research Station Gamma. Jake knew exactly what kind of discussion it would be. Counselor Vrex was already speaking when Jake arrived. The massive Vorthan was explaining to the other species how the attack had been a tragic misunderstanding. Our patrol vessels detected unusual energy readings from the human research station. Vrex said, his red eyes glowing with false sincerity. When we attempted to investigate the station's defensive systems activated. Our commanders believed they were under attack. Defensive systems? Asked Ambassador Zill of the Zephyrian Empire. The humans were authorized only basic research equipment. Apparently, their research involved dangerous energy experiments. Vrex replied smoothly. Our sensors detected weapon-grade power signatures. Our response was necessary for regional security. Jake listened to the lies with his usual calm expression. Around the chamber, representatives from other species nodded and murmured their understanding. No one wanted to challenge the Vorthans. Directly, what compensation will be provided to the families of the victims? Jake asked quietly. The chamber fell silent. All eyes turned to Jake, who sat alone at the human table. His voice had been so calm, so reasonable, that it seemed strange in the aftermath of such violence. Vrex's red eyes fixed on Jake with something like amusement. Compensation? For an unfortunate accident caused by human safety violations? I think. Not, I see, Jake said. He made a note on his tablet. his movements slow and deliberate. "Will there be an investigation into the incident?" "The Vorthan military has conducted a full review," Rex replied. "The matter is closed." Jake nodded and continued taking notes. His calm acceptance seemed to satisfy the other council members. The humans were behaving exactly as expected, accepting their losses without protest. But Jake's notes weren't about the meeting. He was writing a very different kind of message, one that would soon reach human agents throughout the galaxy. The message was simple. Harvest season begins now. After the meeting, Jake walked slowly to his quarters. Other diplomats avoided him, uncomfortable with his presence after such a tragedy. They expected him to be angry or upset. His calm demeanor made them nervous. In his private room, Jake activated the secure communication system. Director Martinez appeared on the screen, his face grim but determined. "The station is completely destroyed," Martinez reported. "No survivors." The Vorthans used military-grade plasma weapons, not the defensive systems they claimed. "How quickly?" "Can we implement the response plan?" Jake asked. "All assets are in position. We can begin in 12 hours. "Good. Make sure our people understand this isn't revenge. This is justice." Jake ended the call and sat back in his chair. Through his window, the stars looked the same as always. But everything had changed. The galaxy was about to discover what happened when you pushed human patience too far. On Earth, Admiral Steve Parker emerged from his hidden command center for the first time in 15 years. For decades, he had been officially listed as a shipping coordinator, managing cargo routes between human colonies. In reality, he commanded the largest military force in human space. "All fleet commanders, this is Admiral Parker," he broadcast. "On secure channels, Operation Harvest Moon is now active. Execute Phase 1 immediately." Across the galaxy, ships that had appeared to be civilian cargo vessels began revealing their true nature. Hidden weapon systems deployed from concealed bays. Sensor arrays that had been disguised as communication equipment activated their military functions. Mining platforms transformed into defensive fortresses. The Vorthans had spent decades watching human ships and installations, confident that they understood human capabilities. They had no idea that everything they thought they knew was carefully constructed deception. Captain Ryan Cole commanded the first strike force from his flagship, the merchantman Liberty Bell. To any external observer, it looked like a simple transport ship. When its hull panels slid away to reveal advanced weapon systems, the illusion finally shattered. "Target the Vorthan patrol base at Kepler 7, Cole ordered. "Disable their communications first, then their weapons. Minimal casualties." The attack was swift and precise. The Vorthan base had been built to intimidate human miners, not to fight a real military force. Within minutes, its defenses were neutralized, and its personnel were surrendering. Similar strikes occurred simultaneously across 12 star systems. Every Vorthan outpost that had been used to harass human colonies was quickly overwhelmed by forces that seemed to appear from nowhere. On New Hope Colony, Administrator Helen Ross finally dropped her submissive act. When Colonel Mordick burst into her office demanding explanations, he found her standing behind her desk with a confident smile. "What is the meaning of this?" Mordick roared. "Our bases are under attack. Your people claim they know nothing." "I know exactly what's happening," Helen replied calmly. "You attacked and killed 47 innocent people. Now you're discovering that actions have consequences." "Impossible. Humans don't have military forces. We've monitored your pathetic fleet for decades." Helen activated her wall display, showing tactical information from across the region. Red markers indicated Vorthan positions that were being systematically neutralized. Blue markers showed human forces that Mordock had never known existed. "You monitored what we wanted you to monitor," Helen said. "Every inspection you conducted, Every search you performed, every intimidation tactic you used taught us exactly how you think and fight. You've been our teachers for 50 years. Mordek stared at the display in shock. His supposedly secure military positions were falling one after another to forces that had been invisible just hours ago. "This is impossible," he whispered. "No," Helen corrected. "This is patience." Engineer Tony Clark appeared in the doorway, no longer pretending to be a simple maintenance worker. He wore the uniform of a human military officer, and he carried weapons that looked far more advanced than anything the Vorthans had seen from humans before. "Colonel Mordek," Tony said formally, "you and your forces are now prisoners of the Human Colonial Defense Force. You will be treated according to galactic law, which is more consideration than you showed our people." On Galactic Station 7, Jake Morrison was preparing for his final appearance before the Council. News of the human military response had spread quickly, and representatives from across the galaxy were demanding explanations. Dr. Lisa Bennett found him in his quarters, packing his personal belongings. "The Council is in emergency session," she said. "They're calling for immediate action against humanity." "Let them call," Jake replied. "By the time they decide what to do, it will be too late. Are you ready for this? Once you walk into that chamber, there's no going back." Jake smiled, and for the first time in years, his expression showed genuine emotion. "I've been ready for this my entire career. The question is whether they're ready for the truth." The council chamber was chaos when Jake arrived. Representatives from dozens of species were shouting at each other, demanding action, explanations, and immediate military response. Counselor Vrex was trying to maintain order, but his own shock was evident. Jake walked to the human table and stood quietly, waiting for the noise to subside. Gradually, the chamber fell silent as the aliens realized he was there. "Counselor Morrison," Vrex said, his voice tight with barely controlled rage. "Your species has committed acts of war against the Vorthan hegemony. Explain yourself." Jake looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of representatives who had spent decades treating humans as servants and tools. When he spoke, his voice was calm but carried an authority that none of them had ever heard from him before. "For 53 years, humanity has served this council faithfully," he began. "We accepted every dangerous assignment, every unfavorable trade agreement, every insult and humiliation. We did this not because we were weak, but because we were learning." "Learning what?" demanded Ambassador Zill. "Learning how you think. Learning how you fight. Learning your weaknesses and your fears. Every time you treated us badly, you taught us something." The Vorthan High Command received the first reports 6 hours after Jake Morrison walked out of the council chamber. General Krax stared at the tactical display in disbelief, his red eyes wide with shock. "This cannot be accurate," he growled at his aide. "Humans do not possess these capabilities." "The reports are confirmed, sir," replied Colonel Voss nervously. 17 of our outer patrol bases have been neutralized. The attacks were coordinated and precise. No base had time to send a distress signal. Krax studied the display more carefully. Red indicators showed the locations of destroyed or captured Vorthan positions. The pattern was too perfect to be accidental. Someone had been planning these strikes for a very long time. "What about their fleet?" Krax demanded. "Our intelligence reports show they have only 43 ships, all of them civilian cargo vessels." "Sir, that's where the reports become unusual. The attacking ships appeared to be civilian vessels, but they deployed military-grade weapons and shielding. Our commanders report that human technology is far more advanced than we believed." "General." Krax felt something he had not experienced in decades: fear. The Vorthans had built their empire on superior military strength. If humans possessed advanced technology and had been hiding it for 50 years, The implications were terrifying. "Mobilize the Third Fleet," he ordered. "Prepare for immediate deployment to human space. If they want war, we will give them war." But Admiral Steve Parker had anticipated this response. From his command ship, hidden in the asteroid field near Sol, he watched Vorthan fleet movements through sensors that had been monitoring their communications for years. "They're taking the bait," reported his tactical officer, Commander Nick. "Johnson, the Third Fleet is moving toward the Kepler system, just as our models predicted." "Good," Parker replied. "Make sure they have a clear path. I want them to think they're choosing their own route." What the Vorthan fleet didn't know was that their chosen route took them through space that humans had been fortifying for 20 years. Hidden weapons platforms, disguised as mining equipment, were positioned throughout the region. Sensor networks, built into seemingly innocent research stations, tracked every ship movement. Professor Dan Miller watched the developing situation from his office at the Strategic Studies Institute on Luna. For 30 years, he had been documenting alien military tactics, writing papers that seemed like boring academic research. In reality, he had been preparing the ultimate tactical analysis of galactic warfare. "The Vorthans are following Pattern 7, he reported to Admiral Parker. "Overwhelming force, direct approach, minimal strategic thinking. Their arrogance makes them predictable." "What about the other species?" Parker asked. "The Zephyrians are mobilizing their own fleets, but they're staying in defensive positions. They want to see how this plays out before choosing sides. The Ethereals are calling for peace negotiations, but they won't intervene militarily." "Perfect. Keep monitoring their communications." Agent Linda Gray had spent 30 years building relationships within alien governments. Her cover as a cultural attaché had given her access to the highest levels of galactic politics. Now, as the crisis escalated, she was providing intelligence that no military force could obtain through normal means. "The Zephyrian Council is divided," she reported from her position within their government. "Half want to support the Vorthans, half want to remain neutral. They're afraid that if humans can deceive them for 50 years, what else might they be hiding?" This was exactly what human strategists had hoped for. The revelation of human deception was creating doubt and suspicion throughout the galaxy. Species that had trusted each other for centuries were suddenly questioning everything they thought they knew. The Vorthan Third Fleet entered the Kepler system with flags flying and weapons ready. Admiral Thane, commanding from his flagship destroyer, expected to find frightened human miners and a few defensive ships. Instead, he found something that changed everything. "Sir," his sensor officer reported, "I'm detecting massive energy signatures throughout the system. These readings don't match our intelligence reports." "Explain," Thane ordered. "The asteroid mining platforms are showing military-grade power outputs. The research stations have active weapon systems. And sir, I'm detecting at least 60 ships in the system, not the 12 we expected." Admiral Thane felt his confidence wavering. His intelligence reports had assured him that humans possessed minimal military capabilities. If those reports were wrong, his fleet might be walking into a trap. "Open a communication channel to the human forces," he ordered. The response came from Admiral Parker himself, speaking from his flagship hidden among the asteroids. "This is Admiral Parker of the Human Colonial Defense Force. You are entering human space without authorization. Turn back immediately." Thane stared at his communication screen. "Admiral Parker? Our intelligence shows no human admiral by that name." "Your intelligence has been wrong about many things," Parker replied calmly. "This is your only warning. Leave our space or face the consequences. You dare threaten the Vorthan Empire?" Thane roared. "We have crushed dozens of species who thought they could resist us." "And how many of those species had 50 years to study your tactics?" Parker asked. "How many had agents in your government listening to your plans?" How many knew exactly when and where you would attack? The communication ended, leaving Thane staring at a blank screen. Around him, his bridge crew looked nervous. The confidence they had felt entering the system was rapidly disappearing. "Sir," the tactical officer reported, "we're being targeted by weapon systems we can't identify. The energy readings are unlike anything in our databases." "Impossible. Human technology is primitive." "Not anymore, sir." The first shots came from directions the Vorthans hadn't expected. Mining platforms revealed themselves to be heavily armed. Fortresses. Research stations deployed weapons that cut through Vorthan shields like they were made of paper. Ships that had looked like cargo haulers transformed into military vessels with firepower that matched the best Vorthan designs. "Admiral." Thane's flagship took 3 direct hits before he could order evasive maneuvers. His mighty destroyer, pride of the Vorthan fleet, was being torn apart by enemies he had never seen coming. "All ships, retreat to safe distance," he ordered, his voice cracking with shock, but retreat was not possible. The humans had planned this. Battle carefully, using the Vorthans' own aggressive tactics against them. The alien fleet was surrounded by forces that had been invisible just minutes before. Within 2 hours, the entire Vorthan Third Fleet was either destroyed or surrendering. Admiral Thane found himself a prisoner aboard Admiral Parker's flagship, staring at displays that showed the true extent of human military power. "This is impossible," Thane whispered. "We monitored your colonies for decades. We inspected your ships. We knew your capabilities. You knew what we wanted you to know." Parker replied, "Every inspection you conducted was carefully managed. Every ship you examined was exactly what it appeared to be. But you never saw our real assets because you never looked in the right places." Parker activated a holographic display showing the galaxy. Thousands of blue dots appeared, representing human positions that the aliens had never suspected. "We've been building this network for 50 years, Parker explained. "Every time you gave us a dangerous mining assignment, we used it as cover to place military assets. Every trade route you forced us to accept gave us strategic positions throughout the galaxy." Thane stared at the display in horror. The humans hadn't just been preparing for war. They had been positioning themselves to control the entire galaxy. "Why?" he asked. "Why reveal this now?" "Because you murdered 47 innocent people and called it an accident," Parker said, his calm voice carrying deadly intent. "Because you pushed our patience too far." On Galactic Station 7, the emergency council session had been going on for 12 hours. Reports were coming in from across the galaxy about human military actions. The species that had dismissed humans as weak servants were discovering a terrifying truth. Counselor Vrex paced back and forth in front of the main display, his red eyes blazing with fury and fear. The tactical situation was worse than anyone had imagined. "How could we have been so blind?" demanded Ambassador Zill of the Zephyrians. "How could an entire species hide their true capabilities for 50 years? "They didn't just hide their capabilities," replied Ambassador Quinn of the Ethereals, her voice filled with something like admiration. "They used our own assumptions against us. We saw what we expected to see. The question now," said Counselor Vrex, "is what do we do about it?" The answer came from an unexpected source. Dr. Chris Taylor, a human diplomat who had worked quietly in the background for years, entered the chamber carrying official documents. "The Human Republic offers terms for immediate ceasefire and negotiation," he announced. The chamber fell silent. No one had realized there were still human representatives on the station. "You have no right to make demands," Rex snarled. "Your species has committed acts of war." "Our species has responded to acts of war," Taylor corrected. "The murder of 47 civilians was an act of war. We simply chose to respond more effectively than you expected." Taylor activated a portable holographic projector, showing the current tactical situation throughout the galaxy. H. President Nicole Davis stood before the cameras in the Earth government building, knowing that her words would reach every corner of human space and beyond. Behind her, the flags of Earth and the new human republic hung side by side, symbols of a transformation 50 years in the making. "My fellow humans," she began, her voice calm but filled with authority, "and our neighbors throughout the galaxy. Today marks not just the end of one era, but the beginning of another. For 5 decades, humanity has walked a careful path, learning, growing, and preparing for this moment." The broadcast was being watched on every human colony, every human ship, and in the government centers of alien species across the galaxy. The woman speaking was not the submissive human leader they had expected, but someone who radiated confidence and strength. "We chose patience not because we were weak, but because we understood something our neighbors did not. True strength comes not from the ability to destroy, but from the wisdom to know when destruction is necessary and when it can be avoided." On the bridge of Admiral Parker's flagship, Commander Alex Murphy monitored alien communication networks. The responses to the president's speech were exactly what human strategists had predicted. "The Zephyrian government is in emergency session," he reported. "They're debating whether to support the Vorthans or negotiate separately with us." "What? About the Ethereals?" asked Admiral Parker. "They're calling for immediate peace talks. Their Council of Minds is meeting now to discuss a formal response." "And the smaller species?" "Most are staying neutral and waiting to see how this plays out. A few are quietly sending diplomatic messages expressing interest in trade agreements." "Admiral." Parker nodded with satisfaction. The galaxy was reacting exactly as Professor Miller's analysis had predicted. Fear was making the dominant species reconsider their positions, while smaller species saw an opportunity for better treatment under human leadership. Dr. Chris Taylor was already busy with the diplomatic response. His years of quiet work in the background had prepared him for this moment. While other humans had maintained the illusion of weakness, he had been building relationships with moderate voices in alien governments. "Ambassador Quinn has requested a private meeting," reported his aide, Lieutenant Karen Foster. "The Ethereal Council wants to discuss terms for a separate peace agreement." "Good. What about the Zephyrians?" "Ambassador Zill is being cautious, but several members of their trade council have reached out through back channels. They're more interested in economic cooperation than military confrontation." "And the Vorthans?" "Radio silence from their government. But we're intercepting communications from their military commanders. They're arguing about whether to escalate or negotiate." Chris smiled. The Vorthans were discovering that military strength without strategic thinking was useless. Their entire culture was based on intimidation and overwhelming force. They had no experience dealing with an opponent who was both stronger and smarter than they were. Meanwhile, on New Hope Colony, Administrator Helen Ross was dealing with the aftermath of the Vorthan occupation. Colonel Nordic and his forces were now prisoners, being held according to galactic law, while their government decided how to respond. "The colonel wants to speak with you," reported Lieutenant Tony Clark, now openly wearing his military uniform. "He claims he has information about Vorthan military planning." "Bring him to my office," Helen said, "but maintain full security protocols." Colonel Nordic looked very different from the arrogant commander who had terrorized the colony just days before. His red eyes were dim with defeat, and his massive frame seemed somehow smaller. "You deceived us," he said without preamble. "We survived you," Helen corrected. "There's a difference. My government will never accept this. The Vorthan Empire does not negotiate with inferior species." Helen activated her wall display, showing the current tactical situation. Vorthan forces throughout the galaxy were either destroyed, captured, or in full retreat. Their third fleet was gone. Their outer colonies were undefended. Their trade routes were controlled by human forces. Your government has two choices. She said, they can accept the new reality and negotiate terms that allow both our species to coexist peacefully. Or they can continue fighting and watch their empire collapse completely. Mordek stared at the display, finally understanding the true scope of human capabilities. How long have you been planning this? Since the day your people first called. U.S. Week, Helen replied. Every insult, every humiliation, every act of cruelty was noted and remembered. You taught us exactly what we needed to know about defeating you. What happens to us now? That depends on your government's decision. We don't want to destroy the Vorthan Empire. We want to transform it into something better. But if your leaders choose pride over wisdom, we'll do what we must to protect innocent lives. Back on Galactic Station 7, the emergency council session was entering its third day. The 24-hour deadline given by Dr. Taylor had passed, but the human diplomat had agreed to extend negotiations as long as progress was being made. Counselor Vrex looked exhausted as he addressed the assembly. The proud Vorthan leader had aged years in just a few days, his red eyes dim with the weight of his species' collapse. The Vorthan High Command has authorized me to negotiate, he announced, his voice barely above a whisper. A murmur ran through the chamber. No one had expected the Vorthans to surrender so quickly. What terms do you propose? Asked Dr. Taylor. Immediate ceasefire. Withdrawal of human forces from Vorthan space. Return of our captured personnel. In exchange, we offer compensation for the Research Station Gamma incident and recognition of human sovereignty over your claimed territories. Taylor shook his head. Not enough. You're still thinking like conquerors who lost a battle, not like a species that needs to fundamentally change how it relates to its neighbors. What more do you want? Vrex demanded, some of his old arrogance returning. We want the Vorthan Empire to become the Vorthan Republic. We want your military forces reduced to defensive levels. We want your government to include representatives from all species in your territory, not just Vorthans. And we want a formal apology to every species you've oppressed over the past 5 centuries. The chamber fell silent. The demands weren't just for surrender. They were for complete transformation of Vorthan society. Impossible, Vrex said. The Vorthan people will never accept such terms? Then the Vorthan people will discover what happens when an entire galaxy turns against them, Taylor replied calmly. Because make no mistake, Counselor, this isn't just about humanity anymore. Every species in this chamber has suffered under Vorthan domination. They're waiting to see if we can offer them something better. As if to prove his point, Ambassador Zill of the Zephyrians stood up. The Zephyrian Empire formally requests negotiations with the Human Republic for a mutual defense treaty, he announced. Within minutes, representatives from a dozen other species were making similar announcements. The galaxy's power structure was collapsing, and everyone wanted to be on the winning side. Dr. Taylor looked around the chamber with satisfaction. This was exactly what human strategists had hoped for. By demonstrating that patience and intelligence could defeat brute force, humanity was offering a new model for galactic civilization. The offer stands for 72 hours, he told Vrex. After that, we'll begin implementing our own solution to the Vorthan problem. 3 days later, Counselor Vrex returned to the chamber with a document bearing the seal of the Vorthan High Command. His red eyes were filled with a mixture of defeat and something that might have been relief. The Vorthan Empire accepts the terms, he announced. We will begin the transition to a republic government immediately. A transformation that followed was swift and comprehensive. Human peacekeeping forces, led by Commander Alex Murphy, helped maintain order as the old galactic system dissolved. Species that had been oppressed for centuries suddenly found themselves with voices in their own governance. The Zephyrian trade guilds, freed from Vorthan control, quickly negotiated favorable agreements with human colonies. The Ethereals, no longer forced to remain neutral to avoid Vorthan retaliation, began sharing their advanced technologies with species they had previously been forbidden to help. Even the smaller species, long ignored by the galactic powers, found new opportunities. Under the human-led system, President Davis had meant what she said about cooperation being better than domination. On Earth, Jake Morrison retired from diplomatic service to write his memoirs. The book, titled The Art of Strategic Patience, became required reading at diplomatic schools throughout the galaxy. People often ask me if we always plan to reveal our true capabilities, he wrote. The answer is both yes and no. We prepared for the possibility that patience alone wouldn't be enough, but we always hoped it would be. The tragedy is that it took the murder of innocent people to show the galaxy that there was a better way. Dr. Lisa Bennett continued her research into alien psychology, but now her work focused on understanding cooperation rather than conflict. Her new studies showed how different species could work together more effectively than any single species could work alone. Admiral Parker returned to his official role as a shipping coordinator, though now everyone knew what that title really meant. The Human Colonial Defense Force remained